You're on.
When the nuclear industry began, they didn't tell people that there was a problem with waste. They said it was clean energy. And for the first 30 years of the nuclear industry, 40s, 50s, 60s, right up into the 70s, there was really no acknowledgement that this was a major problem. It was only around the middle of the 1970s that reports began to come out in the United States, in Britain, in Canada, about this terrific problem, because the nuclear waste is going to remain dangerous for literally millions of years, and it is so toxic that it surpasses all other toxic waste that we've ever known. For example, in Canada, there was a report from a Royal Commission on Electric Power Planning, which made a calculation that just the waste from one nuclear reactor in Canada, just 1 year's waste, would be enough if you wanted to dissolve this to the maximum permissible concentration of radioactivity. You would require a quantity of water approximately equal to Lake Superior. And now you think about 20 reactors in Canada operating for 30 years each, that would require 600 Lake Superiors. We don't have 600 Lake Superiors. And that means that to store this waste, it has to be not just 90% perfect or 99.99% perfect. It has to be far more perfect than that, because if only 1/1000th of 1% of this material leaks into the environment, it's a disaster. So this is why it is really an unsolved problem of the human race, because we have not successfully disposed of anything in our entire history. So why should we begin with the most toxic material that we've ever known and say, oh, we know how to dispose of this, even though we've never disposed of anything else? And so what we have here is a scientific lie. It's really using the scientific priesthood, or putting on the robes of the scientific priesthood, to tell people, rest assured, science will solve this problem. The fact is, we don't even have principles of science that can predict what's going to happen in such an enormously long period of time. We have no method of science that will tell us that when we put something in one place, it will stay there for the next million years. In fact, nature has proven us wrong time and time again, because nature is the great recycler. It has ways of recycling things that you wouldn't believe would be able to be recycled. We found DDT in the middle of the Sahara Desert. We found DDT in the Greenland ice sheet, even though DDT was never used in those places. So it just shows that this material, nature has ways of circulating it around the globe. So this is the bottom line, is that if we do not have a solution to a problem, we have to begin honestly by admitting that. And that means that having no solution, we have to figure out what is the best way to keep it out of the environment. And the best way to do that is by having constant monitoring and surveillance and making sure that that waste is accessible and retrievable for safety purposes. Now, granted, people don't want to have this waste in their communities, but there it is. We have produced this waste through nuclear power, and the first thing to do is to stop making more of it, because this just makes the problem worse and worse and worse. So we should stop making it, and we should make sure that it is packaged in the best possible way, and that there are people in charge who are available to monitor it for the long term in the future, and able to repackage it and retrieve it whenever necessary to make sure that people are protected and the environment is protected. If and when this stuff starts to leak, that somebody should be able to blow the whistle, ring the alarm bell, and say, hey, we've got a problem, let's get to work right away. We've got to stop this from getting worse, and in fact we have to go back to a more stable configuration, that is, repackage the waste and make it safer. So this is what we should be concentrating on here. We call it rolling stewardship. This is a concept that was actually developed by the National Academy of Sciences in 1985 in connection with other types of toxic materials, not radioactive materials, but things like heavy metals like arsenic and mercury and lead and so on. They said that you really have to have an institutional commitment to having an organization that will monitor this waste and that will be ready to take action whenever anything starts to go wrong. and they must have the resources and the knowledge and the expertise to be able to deal with that problem. Now we're suggesting something like a 20-year turnover, so that every 20 years or so you could have a kind of a changing of the guard. And this could be done with a lot of fanfare and publicity, because it's important that the community know about these problems and how well or not well they're being looked after. The reason for community awareness, and this is long-term going into the future, the reason for community awareness is so that the resources will be made available, because people will realize it's in their own best interest to make sure that sufficient resources are available to do the corrective action, to take the corrective measures. And so the idea of a changing of the guard every 20 years would give a chance to have this broadcast on television, and to have the new people who are taking over the responsibility of monitoring this waste to be fully informed. They will be told, okay, this is what we know about this waste, this is why it is so dangerous, this is why you must take every precaution in order to maintain it in the best possible state. And we expect you, as the next incoming guardians, to improve what we have done, because knowledge advances, abilities advance, and gradually we can get better and better at managing this waste in the best way possible, and eventually never give up the search for a real solution. We may be able at one day to find a solution. Perhaps science will develop a way that will allow us to neutralize this waste. Perhaps we will develop a way that we can safely put it into a place where it will be destroyed, like the center of the sun, for example. But until that day, it is our responsibility to the planet as well as to ourselves to guard it and to monitor it and to make it retrievable. This is called rolling stewardship. In the meantime, we just have to admit that it was a big mistake embarking upon this exercise without having a solution. And therefore, we should stop producing it. We should stop producing more of it.
That's wonderful. Say your name. Say who you are.
Yeah, my name is Gordon Edwards. I'm the president of the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility, and I've been at this for over 40 years now.
Okay, I'm going to stop this clip because, and I'm going to ask you to do another.